I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the next reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Anguish is over. Yes, John, you're my best boy and the best surgeon in town.
Andy. But he's just, what did she say? The nurse? When she was just like, he's the best surgeon. And the nurse on the phone was just like, but he's just an assistant or whatever.
Yeah, he's just an assistant.
Yeah.
Andy, this movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
Had you heard of this movie?
No, I hadn't heard of this movie. I
had seen the box. Like, I remember the box because I loved Poltergeist as a kid. And so when I would go to Blockbuster, I always remember Zelda Rubinstein was just such a person. Like, she carried such interesting weight as just a performer from Poltergeist that I was always drawn to anything that she was in. Even though I never watched this, I just always remember looking at the box. And that's why I picked it for this series, because I saw the VHS cover, Anguish, and it just had a picture of Zelda Rubinstein with kind of like the spirals over it and everything. I'm like, ooh, I should check that one out. It looks interesting. I never did, and I kind of regret it.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at all the years you could have spent just really in a state having seen this movie much younger.
Oh, yes. No kidding. No kidding.
We should start with our usual disclaimer.
Yes. This series that we're doing is the Spoiled, Rotten Twist Ending series, which is a series about movies that have twists. And if you know what they are, if you've seen it already, can you return to it, or is the film essentially spoiled for you because the twists don't necessarily hold up? And so this is going to be a film that instantly will be spoiled as soon as we start talking about it in greater detail. So if you want to watch this movie and not be spoiled, and we definitely recommend, check out this movie. If you like horror movies, if you like films that are doing interesting things, definitely go check out this movie and do it before you tune into the podcast, because we are going to spoil it for you.
And if you don't have any eye anxieties, no eyeball anxieties, this movie will be triggering.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
Okay.
So, here we are.
I got to tell you, for the first 5 minutes of this movie, I kind of hated it. And I thought you were setting me up. I thought that's what was happening.
I will say there are moments in the film where you are wondering, it's like, okay, this feels like a low budget 80s horror movie, and I just don't know how it's going to turn into something, I mean, it could be entertaining, but is it ever going to be good? Because, I mean, it's a story of this schlubby guy who, Michael Lerner, who I always think
Michael Lerner.
Oh, he's great. I always think of him from Barton Fink.
Yep.
But yeah, he is John Pressman, and his mom is Zelda Rubinstein, Alice, the mother. And he works at an eye doctor's clinic, and also seems to have an obsession with eyes. And basically the story, the long and the short of it is, he isn't getting his dues according to his mother, and so she uses her weird abilities to hypnotize him to go out and cut out the eyes of people who are problems in his life, all starting with this patient. And that's kind of the essentially the setup of the story.
It feels very much like a B movie. It feels like, it's just full of the tropes of kind of overacting through, grand gestures and weird angles and shots. And it's put together in a way that just feels cheap.
Yeah.
But kind of in a good way. Now,
yeah.
This, as he's murdering people, all of this is revealed to be a movie that is being watched by an audience in Los Angeles.
Right.
Where another moviegoer is also killing people in the movie theater.
Right. Well,
So-
and you didn't mention that in the context of the story, John actually, as he goes on his killing rampage, he goes into a movie theater.
Yes. Yes,
Which is kind of a critical part because we don't get this reveal until he's gone into a movie theater and this audience is watching the 1960 dinosaur film, The Lost World.
Yep.
And that's when we suddenly cut to the fact that, we're now watching an audience watch this movie about John as he's now gone into a movie theater.
Who is watching the movie and killing people. So now we have two killers, one in the movie, one in this fictional theater, in this theater in Los Angeles, both jumping around killing people. And there is that second act where it cuts back and forth. And I don't know about you, but I was just kind of not sure. Are we in the same movie theater? Like, are there two killers in this movie theater? Because the movie theaters look very, very similar. It's only when you get these cuts that show the screen that you realize something is amiss. That slow burn second act is some of the best straight up filmmaking that I can remember. Like, it is so taut and fun. I was absolutely edge of my seat in this movie by then.
Yeah. No, and it was so fascinating to watch as all of this was happening because you don't realize that this person in the theater in this second story that we're getting is actually going to be killing people. Like we're getting a sense from, we're largely in this theater following Patty, who is really kind of panicking. She's having a hard time watching this horror movie. Her friend, Linda, doesn't seem to care. She's like, it's just a movie. It's fun. I want to stay. And Patty's like, I just need to leave. And she's noticing, like, she's one of those scared people. So she's looking around the audience and she sees this guy across the way who seems to be fidgeting and looking at his watch a lot. She sees all of these other people. And so we're getting this sense that she is having this very hard time and may not make it through this film. We're also seeing, especially as we're kind of going through the process of shifting back and forth, Zelda Rubinstein goes through a prolonged hypnosis with her son, John, to put him into deep sleep spirals. Watch the spirals. She's going through the process. And we're seeing the audience watching this film actually, like some of them are seeming like they're becoming hypnotized. Like their eyelids are drooping. One guy breaks out into heavy sweats. And Patty also seems to be having a very hard time. And that's when she finally steps out and goes to the bathroom, but then panics because she thinks that this guy has followed her and went into the ladies' room and has her friend go out. And that kind of sets up the story for this killer in the theater. And we get a sense of what's going on with him, which I found fascinating because we don't know why would this guy be doing anything. But then it's when he comes out and he's talking to the woman at the concessions and she sees him. It's like, oh, you sure love this movie. How many times has it been now? This is a guy who loves coming and watching this movie. He's obsessed with it. Why? Well, then that's when he pulls out a gun and starts killing all these people.
And yeah, we do get that the movie impacts people in different ways in this movie. That setup is really good. This guy was like, we're to read that he's also been hypnotized by Zelda Rubinstein in the movie. And that payoff is really good. It's really good. Like, it just works for me for some reason. I mean, I was hypnotized by this movie.
Well, and because he's talking about his mother, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's what was so interesting is like, does this guy actually have mommy issues, or has he been somehow brainwashed by watching this movie so many times that, the mother character, or the mommy, as it's called in the movie that they're actually watching, we see the movie poster and it's the mommy, has she, in the context of just doing this in the film, hypnotized him into actually believing that he is in some capacity also John.
Right. The first movie with Lerner, John, the hypnosis also has this angle of mother giving son energy, right? It's got this weird sort of Oedipal thing going on, that they are connected beyond where they should be. And as she hypnotizes him, like the voice, once they're connected, he can sort of hear her while he's killing people. And she's telling him to take their eyes. And we actually get him individuating from his mother while on a murderous rampage. I mean, he's a grown man. He's an adult. He's a assistant. He works in an ophthalmological laboratory, and he's just now individuating from his mother by way of killing people and taking their eyes. And it is absurd, and it just that once we get into that part, I don't think I recognized how much I would appreciate it until I got through the fact that we're actually watching the movie in the movie. That the tonal sandwich of this movie is what plays. That is what works for me. That we end up moving to a more contemporary setting in the second movie that addresses all of the concerns I have with the original film.
Well, yeah, because the original film, as it's portrayed, as we said, like it starts and we're like, okay, this is going to be kind of a pretty average B movie. Like, is it going to be able to step beyond that at all, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's now you're passing your cough on to me.
It could happen.
And I think that's what I found so interesting is that movie never seems to. I mean, it's fascinating the way that she, like, it has things I don't understand. Like somehow she can hear this this client who does not like John as the assistant who is trying to put these contacts into her eyes. Like she doesn't like her or doesn't like this woman, but somehow can hear the whole conversation like through a seashell. Right?
Yes.
Like there are things and I'm like, is she a witch? Is like, what's going on with her? I couldn't quite figure that out. But then, yeah, as you said, there is this weird, like Oedipal psychic connection between mother and son because like she is communicating like, come home, John, you're losing your strength. You need to come home so I can power you or whatever she's saying. And he's like hit this point where he's trying to break away and he's like, no, and he wants to just go on to this killing spree. And so it's a fascinating story, but yeah, it's like, I don't know if that's where the story stayed. If it would have been kind of a fun, like B movie to watch, but I don't know if it ever would have been able to step beyond that. And they certainly do by the way of telling it this way.
For sure. And, what's weird about that, like once they become connected, it's almost like everything John sees and hears becomes transmitted to her.
Yeah.
But there is a sequence when the patient and the patient's husband are getting ready for a night out. Does Mommy hear her when John isn't there yet? I just don't remember.
I thought that's when she's like hearing the seashell, right? Or hearing it with the seashell? I thought
that was when they were in the office together.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's when they're in the office. Right. So I don't think she's hearing them until
John gets there to the house.
Yeah.
The whole premise is that John has the alternate contacts he has to give this woman because he gave her the wrong contacts. So he does a house call late at night. And while he's there, he kills her and takes her eyes and then kills her husband and takes his eyes too.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, and the whole idea of stealing eyes, it's an interesting setup, especially because, talking about a film that already has this meta element within it where it's a movie within a movie, then we're also dealing with this obsession with eyes, which, is what we're all using to kind of watch films. It's the way that we absorb this type of storytelling, right?
Yes.
And so already now they're like taking the eyes and it adds this additional element to what we're, how we're reacting, because that's part of movie going is the eyeballs. And here they are stealing all these eyeballs from everybody and wanting to take, the eyes of the city are ours, as she's saying at several points. And it's the idea of like, the windows to the soul and all that sort of stuff is like, what are they taking when they take the eyes? What does that represent in this meta contextual type of storytelling?
I think that's really funny because practically they got to set up a B movie where these people are taking eyes, but because of the nature of this movie, they never have to resolve it, right?
Yeah.
They just get to set up a premise and move on, which is interesting because in the second movie, our killer is like, that's his entire role is a commentary on how he has become taken in a parasocial relationship with the thing that he is a fan of, for lack of a better term. Like, he keeps coming to this movie, he's hypnotized by it, and isn't that sort of an allegory for, what, glorious fandom leads for those of us who are super fans of something or another, that we develop this parasocial relationship to the point where we take action on its behalf as an agent of this work of art. And I think that's another fascinating sort of second layer in the second movie that I just loved. I loved.
Yeah. It plays in such an interesting way about just the nature of all of this, and how is it like any of these movies, like, Rear Window, any of these, where we're also now watching this movie of these people watching this movie, and so it's all self-reflexive, and we're kind of like bringing that into ourselves. Like, had we been watching this in a movie theater, would we also be checking over our shoulders to see, like, is there someone doing this, like cutting someone's eyes out in the row behind me, and like, turning to check, or is someone like walking out of the theater with a gun, and you're wondering about these sorts of things, and it's like, has somebody sealed the doors to the theater so we can't actually escape? Like, all of these things, and I find that type of storytelling to be so fascinating, and they're clearly having a fun time with the development of this story. And as it starts, especially as you said, as we get into that second act and into the third, these stories start overlaying upon each other, like, constantly, where we're jumping back and forth at a regular pace between one killer and another killer, and a victim and another victim, and we're watching these stories where it actually starts feeling like it's becoming one story, and that again makes you think about this nature of, was I watching two movies, or are these people watching one movie, but it all blends into just one thing, and it's fascinating.
We're the third act of this movie, right? In the second movie, the killer has a gun and comes completely unhinged, and the police storm and barricade, and the killer is standing in the front of the movie actively shooting people in the audience. As a Colorado guy, as a citizen, how did you feel watching that, given our collective history as movie lovers, Coloradans, thinking back to Aurora? Did that hit you at all?
It definitely did. Also, this film was, a good, 25 years before Dark Knight Rises, that incident. Right. And, but yeah, it definitely kind of comes into your head. And, this isn't a film that has a strong, like, distribution right now. It's only available in one place, and you have to sign up for a trial through Full Moon over on Amazon in order to get this at this point. That's really the only way you can get it now, or find an old DVD release. It's never been released in any other way. But it does make me wonder if it's kind of like Stephen King, when he was Richard Bachman, had written a story called I'm blanking. It's one of his Bachman books, though. The story is about a school shooting, and it's called Rage, that he published in '77 under Richard Bachman. And he has, after Columbine, he pulled it, and he just said, "This doesn't need to be out there. It's the real world is proving itself to be horror enough. We don't need another story like this out there." And it does make me wonder if there is this element of this film seeming a little too real, as far as people not wanting to kind of explore that. Because I definitely thought about that while this was happening. Yeah. And the whole idea of, once the shooting started, when he was like, sneaking up behind people and cutting their eyes out and stuff, all I could think of was Scream 2.
Yes.
So I wasn't exactly in the realistic terror of a terrorist in a movie theater until he started shooting at the end, and that definitely crossed my mind.
Yeah, man, it's a tough watch. And to your point, again, like 20 years earlier. But the fact that I don't know, I guess it's a commentary on the nature of sort of humanity and our ability to see and create art out of misery, even misery that hasn't happened yet. It was hard for me to imagine that this movie was in any way inspiration for the Dark Knight Rises situation, but it just makes me reflect on us, and I should say that sequence might be triggering for others. If you're an Aurora kid, this might be a tough watch.
Yeah, and that's inevitably there are situations like in probably any movie that could potentially end up causing certain people to just have a harder time with it, and this there are elements in here that could trigger that. Now, I will say, partly because it is, it is still treated like there's a B-ish movie treatment still to the film, and we're still intercutting between the two films. So in some capacity, that takes some of that sense of realism out of it. It doesn't feel quite as, it doesn't put you right into it quite as much. Right. So in some capacity, maybe it's not going to be that bad, but it is still there. It's definitely something to still be aware of as it's happening.
And our principal movie characters, right? The girls that we're watching survive. And there's something a touch redemptive about that. That this is that this actually gives you characters both to watch go through trauma and live through it to the other side.
Although you do wonder how much counseling Patty is going to have after all of this, because one, the movie terrified her. She was already wanting to leave the theater. Her friend kind of refused to acknowledge that, which led to her own, terror in the bathroom. And then Patty ends up being the one that the killer, holds hostage and brings up to the front of the screen and everything. So yeah, it's she's not going to have an easy time after all of this, and may never go to a movie again.
Well, and we should say Talia Paul didn't do much after this. I mean, a couple of things. Actually worked in 2003, but she seems like maybe she might have been traumatized too.
Yeah, a lot of smaller roles.
A lot more music.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is a wild, fascinating film that I found to be really just creative, not what I was expecting at all, and just something that I think people should check out because it's so fascinating. We didn't mention it, but I did want to talk about this, the way that sound and picture play sometimes with and sometimes opposite each other. One, just the sound design was fascinating. Like during the first hypnosis, you hear kind of like this, the metronome ticking as she's doing this hypnosis. I like how she has like a little eyeball cut out on the metronome itself. So it's the eye that's moving back and forth. But you have the metronome ticking, and then as she's going through the process and holding his head and moving her hand down to his heart and stuff, the ticking slowly evolves to become heartbeats, which I found really fascinating. There's another part where there's a scream, and the scream starts like looping, and you just get this kind of echoing scream sound that's happening. And then there's also, at one point, when the phone rings, the audio for the phone ring plays in reverse. And so after the ring, and it's the old style ring. And so after the phone stops and it kind of has that lingering sound, it starts with that lingering sound. It's like, it is just really trippy. But the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I think it's worth talking about, is how the film starts. Because right out of the gate, we are set up with the whole concept of a movie within a movie, right? Like we see on screen a message that says, during the film you are about to see, you will be subject to subliminal messages and mild hypnosis. This will cause you no physical harm or lasting effect, but if for any reason you lose control or feel that your mind is leaving your body, leave the auditorium immediately. We see that on the screen. But while we're reading that, and this ends up making it very difficult to actually concentrate on all this, we're listening to a totally different message, right? a totally different message that is about. I had it here. It's welcome. My name is Tom Goldman. Welcome to our movie. Right. This whole thing. As you've seen in the lobby, we have provided medical service, which is free of charge on presenting your ticket stub. Oxygen masks are available, so if during the movie the guy behind you asks for your ticket, don't give it to him. But anyway, please don't hesitate to go into the lobby if you feel the need. I'm here to advise you also that our company does not assume any legal responsibility for anything that may happen to you during this screening. Good night, folks. Enjoy the movie. Oh, and don't forget, during the projection, don't speak to anyone you don't know.
Yeah.
So you're hearing that.
Nice setup. Yeah.
You're reading this text on the screen, and you're like, what is going on? Because it's this whole idea of like, is any of this serious? Am I supposed to be like, are they really trying to hypnotize me with this movie? Is this just part of the story?
It's
it work? It's a fascinating way to kick things off.
Did it work?
It confused me, and I had to do one, and then I rewound it, and then I played it so I could focus on the other, because it's very difficult reading one, listening to the other, and trying to kind of get a sense as to what both of the messages were. So it did throw me, and I was just like, okay, this is interesting. Where is this movie going? Especially because then once it starts, we're just in the house and we're just kind of following Mommy and John and this whole thing with him going to work and eyeball fascination and all of this sort of stuff. So I'm like, and so it took me a while to I kind of forgot that was there until we hit that point, like a third of the way into the film, when suddenly we're in the movie theater.
That, I think, because it's shortly after that we start getting the repeated cycles of Spiral on the record player. And I've got to tell you, I watched this on the headset in the movie theater mode, and it is I felt like alarmingly disoriented watching this movie, hearing those sounds. Like it was way more effective than it had any right being.
Yeah.
Honestly, like it was moving.
Well, especially like once we get to I think it's the second time she's hypnotizing him, and you get that little light bouncing across the screen, right? And then you're intercutting that with the spiral and everything. It really feels like you're being hypnotized.
It really does. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. This movie is stupidly effective. What do you know about Bigas Luna? This is the only thing I've seen of Bigas Luna. Bigas?
He's
Luna from Barcelona.
Bigas Luna. Yeah, he's a Spanish filmmaker. I have seen one other film of his called Jamón Jamón, which is, I think, the first film with Penelope Cruz and Javier Bardem. I may not. It is Penelope's debut film. It is not Javier's debut film.
Yeah, he was credited, Luna, as discovering Penelope Cruz, right? I think that's one of his credits.
Yeah, it is an interesting movie. There is somebody is like an underwear magnet, essentially. Like they have this empire of making underwear. She gets pregnant, and I think there was elements of it that were a little beyond me, because I think a lot of it was about Spain and kind of the political shifts within the country as far as the old Spain, the new Spain. I didn't completely get it, but it's an interesting film for sure. Definitely some eroticism in it, a lot of food, and that's the only film of his I've seen. But he did that one as kind of this trilogy called the Iberian trilogy: Jamón Jamón, Huevos de Oro, or Golden Balls, and La Teta y la Luna, or The Tit and the Moon. So you can get a sense that trilogy is, as he says, these films explored the darkest depths of eroticism and stereotypical Spanish machismo. So,
well,
interesting.
You know what you like, because
I think he left film though for a while to become an avant-garde artist, I think.
And he and his wife produced wine, ham, and organic products.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
They ran a little farm. I like that on IMDb it says his trademarks are almost all of his movies have references to food and sex, often in the same scene.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely Jamón Jamón. Like that was full on with that one.
Yeah.
I don't think he directed a lot because I do think he was one of those people who worked in film for a while or worked not in film. I think he started in like conceptual design or something and then moved into film and then moved back out of film into something else. And then I think he was drawn back into film later in his career. And then he sadly died of leukemia in 2013. But
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
He's got 23 directing credits.
okay, well, then he was pretty
Not
busy.
a bad career.
No, it really isn't. Definitely, like I'm curious to see more of them, especially after this one. Like Hamon Hamon, I don't think was one that when I watched it that said, "Oh, I need to go watch more from this guy." It was definitely an interesting film, but it didn't like. Again, I think I might need to know a little bit more about some of what was going on in Spain at the time.
Yeah, right.
To watch that one and maybe the others of the trilogy. But like after watching this one, I'm really curious as to what he's doing with his cinematic storytelling.
I don't believe you need to know anything about Spain to have fun with this movie.
Not with this one.
Not a bit.
Other than the fact that it was a Spanish co-production. And I don't know if they shot it in Spain, but like the guy who plays the killer is a Spanish actor, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you think of Zelda as our mom? I mean, obviously we've talked about her just as far as like our connection to Poltergeist and everything.
Yeah, she fits the tone of the first movie. When the movie started and I didn't understand what the movie was, I thought she's too much. I want somebody a little bit more, less of a caricature of this part. Once I realized that this was actually the entire first movie was a fictional interpretation that was itself a caricature, it made more sense. I struggle a little bit with Zelda. Just there is there's something about frequencies of voices that are harder to listen to. So
that's why I
not her
love her.
fault.
It's because her voice.
Yeah, it triggers something. It like makes my jaw lock up in a funny way. And so it's like, some people are affected by ASMR, like it's like that. Like I lock up when I hear too much Zelda Rubinstein.
That's funny.
She's also, she's perfect for this part for Crazy Mom, and her stature is perfect next to Michael Lerner. Like her whole vibe is exactly what we need from this part of the movie. I just personally, I find her kind of hard to listen to.
Could you have seen Betty Davis in the part? It was
Yes.
funny because talking about hagsploitation, those types of films in our conversation last week about Straitjacket, she was offered the part, but due to scheduling conflicts, I think she was doing The Whales of August at the same time. She couldn't do it, and so they went with Zelda.
100% could I see Betty Davis in this part.
I can too, but because the film is what it is, and it ends up being what it is, I can't help but think that it kind of, for me, has to be Zelda, because there is something about her in those hypnosis scenes that just seemed so right,
Yeah. I get that. She does seem like there's a bit of a stereotypical kind of wandering gypsy vibe. Like you met her in a carriage at a fair.
Yeah, right.
A little bit.
Yeah, you don't want to do something wrong and have her come up to you and say thinner.
Oh my god!
She
Oh my
strokes her
God.
face.
I have to say though, like the fun at watching Michael Lerner in this part as a younger man, playing somebody so sheepish and impressionable, that is not my sense of him as a character actor, right? He's usually so big, and in this movie he plays so small. I thought he was probably the most fun that I had watching in the movie.
I fluctuate between him and Patty, but I definitely think as far as it going with just sheer fun, watching Michael Lerner kind of go crazy and the obsession he has with and honestly, the ease he has weirdly with killing people in the movie theater and just like he's got like weird knives like strapped to his arms, strapped to his legs. Like this guy is weirdly over prepared or perfectly prepared to go do this sort of craziness. And it was funny, and he played just the right sort of psycho. Yeah, I agree. I had a lot of fun with him as the lead, and he's not somebody that I feel like I've seen in a lead role, really. I mean, I'm sure he probably has some, but like seeing him in such a primary position in the film, I thought was really, really nice.
He's got just an extraordinary list of credits, 184 acting credits.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have pegged that number that high. He's in everything.
Well, but I think because he is like such a great bit part actor in so many of them, like Elf, Godzilla, Barton Fink, X-Men: Days of Future Past, those are his IMDb's known fors. And yeah, I think every one of those, it's a supporting part.
Yeah. Yeah. He's done a lot of fun television. But again, supporting part, the fact that he shows up in Entourage once when he very much could have been a regular on that show.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. He's another one. I wouldn't even know how to build a series out of fun things to watch from Lerner.
Yeah, I know he's just kind of been in everything. He's great.
He was Johnny on Brady Bunch for one episode, for crying out loud. Brady Bunch, Andy.
Yeah, he goes way back. Like you don't think about that with him, but I mean his career goes like deep into the 60s, like the early 60s. Like
Dr. Kildare, 1963, first televised credit.
Yeah, so clearly he's somebody who'd just been dancing through all this. I mean, especially like TV, so many of them, it's like one episode, 2 episodes. Like he was somebody who's just that guy who is just getting cast regularly and keeping very, very busy doing it. Yeah, no, he's great.
So you said the other one that you had fun watching was Patty, Talia Paul. What was so great about Patty for you?
It was an interesting character to have. Like once we start attaching to the audience in this second story that we're watching, like she is a great audience surrogate because she is having a legit hard time watching this horror movie. Like she's grossed out by these eyeball extractions that John is doing, and she's having a hard time watching. And I just, as we kind of follow her, and maybe it's not like a fun time watching like we are with John because he's just kind of so psycho. Yeah, but she's just it was a great audience surrogate for us to connect with, and I felt like once we meet her, it's clear. It's like, oh, okay, this is kind of the protagonist of this whole movie that we are watching. Right. And now I kind of have a sense as to what's going on. And for me, that played really well. Like I instantly connected with her. I understood her struggle of trying to watch this, her fear of somebody following her into the bathroom. Like it just played. I really enjoyed her as a character.
I'll tell you why you really enjoyed her as a character is because all of these kids in this movie theater, like those were us. And there is not just a little nostalgia at looking how these preppy kids dress. Like I used to go to movies and sit with kids dressed like this in the preppy popped collars and the white knit cable sweaters. Like that was, there's a lot of oversized in that theater. And I was here for it. Yeah. Nostalgically satisfying.
No, that definitely is true. It definitely feels there's that connection.
Yeah. Linda was a real jerk. I didn't care for the friend. Didn't care for her at all. She was not.
But she gets her comeuppance, and that's what I think worked for her. Is like she's the one who walks out into the lobby and ends up having to figure out how to navigate the fact that the killer is now there. Like he has killed both of the employees working out front. She has to ends up hiding in the men's bathroom. And that's exactly where he then drags the bodies. Like that played really well. Like her side of the story worked really well of just being afraid of what's going on with this guy. And then that husband who's trying to help Patty goes to find Linda and he gets killed. Like it folded perfectly, as the story was moving.
I think so. I mean, I totally agree. But that was a toxic friendship, and I think it was probably good for Linda and Patty not to be friends anymore after that.
Well,
Too
did you
much
ever have a friend
toxicity.
abandon you in a movie theater?
Oh, my movie theater story. Oh,
Oh.
that's for therapy.
Oh, okay. Deep, dark something. Gotcha.
No, I have issues. That's
as
for
far
the
as
bonus. That's for the bonus segment.
There you go. As far as cinematography and music, I just kind of like the rest of the things. Like the look of it, I thought worked. The way that we kind of had a darker, more movie look, like the rainy nights and everything going on in the movie, within the movie, but then the actual LA movie was just kind of sunny, and it played really nicely. Like I liked the way that played. And as you pointed out, to the point where you start wondering, the actual insides of the theaters, are we in the same theater? Is this actually happening all in one theater? Like that blended perfectly. Like I liked the way that all unfolded, and the way it looked.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the end, right? Because we haven't there's a third movie, right? Like
Yeah, there is.
that's the big twist. It was for everything in this movie is a twist. But I loved the way the film wraps up, and the fact that I can't. I mean, it's like a snake eating its own tail. I feel like once we get back to the end, I love the way they present. Especially, I would just say the closing credits. Like I love the closing credits. I love watching the closing credits as if I'm watching a theater inside watching the credits of another movie. That was so cool.
No, it was fascinating to do it that way, because then suddenly we're thrust back out. And we didn't even mention there is this potential crossover, and then we're like, was it all in Patty's mind? Where as she is like as the killer has been shot by the police, but then she's like in this panic state. She looks up at the screen, and John says to her, he screams at her
From the movie screen.
Yeah, from the movie screen. What are you looking at? I want your eyes too, like all the others. And he throws his scalpel, and it comes through the screen, and it is in her eye, and she's holding it there, screaming, as she now has this knife blade in her eye. So we're suddenly getting this cross from the movie to the reality, but then it's not. When the paramedics are trying to help her, there is nothing there. It's all in her mind. And then we get Michael Lerner showing up later when she's in the hospital bed, and he's like the doctor said, it's all in your imagination. I really don't exist. As then he goes to come to her to kill her, and then she screams, and that ends the movie. Like it is doing such a great job of playing that. Like, is it in her imagination? Can your imagination kill you? Like it starts playing in such a fun and creative way.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, I did too. I really did. Like the one thing that I felt like it wouldn't, the twist or the end in the hospital wouldn't have played, but I kind of wanted the scalpel to stay in her eyeball. I wanted that crossover to be real. I wanted people to be just messed with enough.
Yeah.
And have her be redeemed in a stronger way, even stronger way than she was already. But,
yeah, right.
What are you going to do? But that final twist in the hospital room wouldn't have played. I just didn't know if I needed it.
Well, it is one of those things. It's like, could that work? I don't know. But as it goes, it still, I think, makes for a fun dance
effective.
between reality and the movie. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I had a blast. What a dumb movie to love so much.
All right. Well, we'll be right back, but first, our credits.
The next reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Roy Spiegler.
That's a hard one.
The next reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Roy Spiegler, The Bows, Skygaze, Oriole Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.
This is me.
Okay.
You settle into your seat in the dimly lit movie theater. You settle into your seat in the dimly lit movie theater, eagerly awaiting the start of the film. As the opening credits roll, the story begins to unfold, centering around a character named Andy, who bears a striking resemblance to you. Andy is a passionate cinephile, just like you. He discovered Letterboxd, an app that allows him to track his movie-watching journey, connect with fellow film lovers, and explore a vast world of cinema. As Andy delves deeper into Letterboxd, you find yourself drawn into the story, recognizing your own experiences mirrored on the screen. Andy's journey becomes intertwined with yours, blurring the lines between reality and fiction. Suddenly, the film takes an unexpected turn. Andy is now sitting in a movie theater watching a film about someone who looks just like you. This new protagonist is also exploring Letterboxd, discovering the benefits of upgrading to a pro or patron account. You are struck by the uncanny resemblance and begin to question your own reality. Are you the one watching the film, or are you the subject of the story being watched by someone else? The film within the film continues, and the new protagonist, who shares your likeness, learns about the exclusive features and perks that comes with being a Letterboxd patron. He discovers a 20% discount for listeners of the Next Reel Film Podcast, which he can use for both new subscriptions and renewals. As this information is revealed, you feel a strange sense of déjà vu. You recall hearing about the discount in your own life, outside of the movie theater. The boundaries between the film and reality become increasingly unclear. The story continues to fold in on itself, with each new layer introducing another character who resembles you, another film within a film, and another revelation about Letterboxd's offerings. The 20% discount from the Next Reel Film Podcast becomes a recurring motif, appearing in each iteration of the story. By the time the film reaches its conclusion, you are left questioning the nature of your own existence. Are you the watcher or the watched? Is your love for cinema a product of your own passion, or is it a script being written by someone else? As the credits roll and the lights come up, you realize that the answer may lie in your own actions. You decide to embrace your love for film and upgrade your Letterboxd account to patron using the 20% discount from thenextreel.com/letterboxd. In doing so, you become an active participant in your own cinematic journey, blurring the lines between observer and observed. In the end, you understand that reality and fiction are inextricably linked, just as your own story is tied to the countless other stories you've watched and will continue to watch on Letterboxd. By upgrading your account and engaging with a vibrant community of film lovers, you become both the protagonist and the audience of your own cinematic odyssey. As you exit the theater, you can't help but wonder if your own story will one day be the subject of a film watched by another cinephile, in another theater, in an endless cycle of stories within stories, all connected by the power of Letterboxd and the love of cinema.
Oh, that was twisty.
Oh, shoot.
So twisty. What?
It was twisty. I just realized I don't think... Yeah, I did. Okay. I want to make sure I actually said thenextreel.com/letterboxd.
Oh.
I do.
Okay. Okay. Andy, sequels and remakes.
Yes.
Come on.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Yes. 2009, Ghost House Pictures and Vertigo Entertainment licensed the rights to a remake, with Jake Wade Wall, who made the When a Stranger Calls remake, writing the screenplay. Never ended up happening. 2021, F. Javier Gutierrez started developing one that he was going to direct. Is supposed to start in 2022. Never happened. Should a remake happen of this?
Well, okay. There's a world in which I think a remake should happen because it's a great story and more people need to be exposed to it, and nobody's exposed to it right now. We're talking about
True.
it. My hunch is, like, how many people who listen to the next reel are going to be able to go out and find it, are going to go through the trouble and find it and set up their free trial just to watch this movie. I think that is a small percentage. I think a lot of people are just going to skip this episode because it's hard to find, or they're going to watch the 2015 version, which isn't this movie. So I think this movie needs more exposure.
Yeah.
Or the story needs more exposure. And I don't have such an attachment to the cast that I don't think it can be redone and modernized in a way that maintains the spirit of the looping mechanism of it.
I agree. There is an element of older films getting remade, and by doing so, also getting rediscovered. That does happen. Yeah. This is a film that could end up getting rediscovered in just that way. I don't know if, I don't know. if it gets remade, like I'm never against remakes, but I'm against a remake if they just do a crappy version of it.
Yes.
And so
I agree.
If they can find the right way to do a remake of this and make it work, then that's fine. It makes me nervous because I feel like this has such an interesting tone to it, especially the fact that we have like I don't know, it felt like 20 minutes where we were actually just trying to be hypnotized.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that other filmmakers, do it the same.
It's
give
like,
it the same sense.
I'll just say an A24 remake. Maybe not a Blumhouse remake. Blumhouse A24? I could see that remake.
Or Neon. Yeah. I mean, there's people, companies who could do it. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm satisfied. How to do it award season? Did it win anything?
It actually did. 5 wins, 3 other nominations. At the Avoriaz Fantastic Film Festival, Josep M. Civet received a special mention for his cinematography for the film. It was nominated for Grand Prize, but lost to the film The Hidden, another fantastic film from 1987. Love that movie. At the Brussels International Festival of Fantasy Film, or BIFF, it won the Golden Raven. At Fantasporto, it was nominated for Best Film in the International Fantasy Film Award category, but lost to George A. Romero's Monkey Shines. At the Goya Awards, or the Spanish Oscars, it was nominated for Best Director, but lost to José Luis García for Course Completed, and it won for Best Special Effects. The Sant Jordi Awards, it won Best Film, and at the Premis de Cinematografía de la Generalitat de Catalunya, it won Best Film. So, it actually had a pretty good run, largely, I think, because Bigas Luna is a Spanish filmmaker. The majority of these were all Spanish festivals or award shows.
The thing that's going to disappoint me the most is if it didn't make any money. That's going to be it. I'll just tell you right now. I'm going to be sad.
Yeah. Well, you might be sad, Pete. I know. Luna apparently had $2 million to make this movie, which is about $5.36 million in today's dollars. The movie opened March 25th, 1987 in Spain, then premiered in the U.S. January 8th, 1988, in a period when 1987 holiday films like Three Men and a Baby, Broadcast News, Eddie Murphy Raw, Throw Mama from the Train, and Wall Street were all still dominating the box office. I have no idea how big a theatrical release this had, but I'm just got to say, based on its box office take, I'm guessing it was tiny, because all it earned was just under $228,000, or $613,000 in today's dollars. Not great at all. This lands with an adjusted loss per finished minute of $53,000, or big box office disappointment.
Yep, I'm sad. That was it.
And perhaps that also speaks to why it's had a harder time getting distribution now.
Yeah.
But I would love to see this in a theater. Like, this would be great to see in a packed house.
Yeah, absolutely would. It's just such a weird treat of a film. And I had way more fun than I expected after the first 15 minutes of it.
Yeah. But then, and after you've crossed those lines, you appreciate those first 15 minutes that much more. Like, the whole thing ended up working really well for me. I loved it.
Me too.
All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie. Returning to our David Fincher series, it's his 2020 film, Mank.
Been a long time.
Been a long time, Mank.
Listen carefully. This is not just a podcast ad. This is an experience. You are no longer in control. You feel it, don't you? The pull, the need to join us, to subscribe, to support. You can't look away. Oh, wait, this is audio. Well, you can't plug your ears. You are powerless now. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to visit truestory.fm/join, and then you're going to unlock a treasure trove of podcasting glory. Imagine this. Periodic bonus episodes dropping right into your personal podcast feed. It's like finding a $20 bill in your couch cushions, except instead of cash, it's pure cinematic gold. But if it were cash, you would give it to us by way of your new membership. But wait, you also get early access to episodes. Yes, you'll be the first to hear about the hottest takes, the deepest dives, the most obscure film trivia about the bunkeriest of your friends. Sorry. the deepest dives, the most obscure film trivia about the bonkeriest movies your friends didn't even know existed. You'll be the film buff they all envy. And if you hate ads, don't we all? You'll love our ad-free versions of select episodes. No interruptions, just pure, uninterrupted bliss. Oh, but there's more. Picture this. You're sitting at home, headphones on, and suddenly you realize you're listening to your very own personal podcast feed. That's right, your own feed. It's like a secret club, except you don't need a handshake because, well, technology. And if you've ever wondered what it's like to be in the room while the recording magic happens, you'll love our live stream sessions. Yes, you'll hear it all. Mistakes, tangents, and maybe even a podcaster spilling Dr. Pepper. It's raw. It's real. It's live. And don't forget about our exclusive Discord channels. That's where the fun really happens. You'll mingle with fellow cinephiles, debate endlessly about movies, and maybe even crack the mysteries of the universe. Or at least figure out why Nicolas Cage took that one role that one time. The time is now. You've been thinking about it. You've been waiting. But why wait any longer? Go to truestory.fm/join. Support the podcast you love. Get the perks you deserve. You cannot resist. You do not want to resist. Join us. The next real family of film podcasts is waiting.
Nicolas Cage, that one movie.
That one time.
Oh, man.
Okay. Letterboxd, Andy. Oh, Letterboxd. You know what Letterboxd is. It's where we put our stars and hearts to movies. It's an economy of love. And we're going to do that right now. What are you going to do for Letterboxd with Anguish?
This, I've been weighing where I'm going to sit with this one because I find it to be such a fascinating film. And I'm like, is this just a straight up 5-star film? I don't think it's quite there, but I do think it's at least 4, maybe 4.5. I'm going to, for now, say, I think I'm going to do 4 stars and a heart. It could increase to 5 over time. It could even increase to 4.5, 4.5, 5. I don't know, but it's way up there. I really loved this movie.
I am exactly right with you. I think it's going to start at a 4-star, but a 4-star and a heart, obviously. But this is 100% a movie I'm going to watch again. I'm going to do my best to acquire it for my own collection because it's worth having. I really enjoyed my experience with this movie. And could it be a 5-star movie one day? One day, Andy. One day.
I think it could be. It's just one of those movies. A few more times, and I think it could be there.
Yeah.
Well, remember, you can find me over at Letterboxd at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete at Pete Wright. And, of course, you can find the show at The Next Reel. So what did you think about Anguish? We definitely would love to hear your thoughts on this one. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins. When Linda is attacked in the elevator after she leaves Patty, right? She goes into the elevator.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Did we get a reveal? Was that also John?
We didn't.
Because she gets attacked. So who is attacking her? So is there a second... Are we watching a second movie?
Yeah.
The duality of the real world and her and Patty's imaginary?
That was my question. Like, what is this third meta movie?
Yeah.
Is that it? Are we in where everybody lives together in the same universe, and now we're in a even more 80s slasher movie?
Jesus.
And was the last the credits roll and the last guy to stand up, was that John? It looked a lot like Lerner to me.
Well, I was wondering. I'm like, who? Yeah, was that him? Could be. That's really interesting.
Because that makes a 4th movie. I don't understand.
Oh my gosh, crazy. We also didn't mention that this movie is full of snail trauma. That was almost too much for me. More than
That
the
was
eyeballs,
rough.
watching that snail get stepped on and then the
stepped
pigeon
on.
like, picking at it.
I didn't care for it.
Oof.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
What do you got? Where'd you go? High, low, middle?
I am at 4 stars. 4 stars by Casarin. And Casarin has this to say. For some people, Cinema Paradiso shows the power of movies. Others have The Fabelmans. For us sickos, we have Anguish.
That's funny. It's kind of in the vibe of what I've got from Aberrant Ghoul. This is a 5-star and a heart. This is why I don't watch horror films with normies anymore. Non-horror fans can be a pain in the ass. This also made me seriously nostalgic for the theater experience. I so wish I could see this in an actual theater with other people. It would be like one of those pictures where someone is holding the picture of them holding the picture, creating an infinite regression like a fractal. This was some grade A top shelf stuff, a swirling vortex of hypnotic visual violence, Hitchcockian levels of suspense, and theatrical meta horror. Zelda Rubinstein creeped me the F out when I was a kid watching Poltergeist. I swear she was the creepiest thing in that movie, aside from the clown. Am I the only one? Anyway, had I watched this as a kid, I probably would have had a damn near heart attack. As a middle-aged horror veteran, this was just delightful. So glad I finally got around to this, and on Halloween weekend, no less, a true meta horror masterpiece. There you go.
Nice.
5 stars and a heart. Meta horror masterpiece.
I love it.
Yep,
Yay.
me too.
Yeah.
Worth it.
I agree, definitely.
Thanks, Letterboxd.